If you want to support the channel, please consider becoming a member today. Members get early access to videos, access to all the stream VODs, and exclusive access to emotes as well. So if you'd like to support the channel, become a member today. This is a video featuring Charlie Kirk on the Whatever podcast debating Pxie. Now, we've covered Pxie multiple times. She's gone on plenty of these podcasts before, but this is her first time debating Charlie Kirk. I have not seen this yet, but we know that Charlie Kirk is, well, let's just, to put it lightly, he's stupid. Okay, we know this. So I'm very curious to see how he is going to navigate this debate. This was on the Whatever podcast, so it's going to be a long video, probably like 4 hours, which I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to watch it all, boo-hoo, but we can definitely pick some of the chapters that we find the most interesting and go from there. Charlie Kirk gushes about his new joy and dating solutions.
I'm in a relationship. It's been 10 months, and my longest relationship was about a year.
All right. Charlie, what about you?
Happily married.
Okay.
We've been together for 5 years, and we'll be celebrating our 3-year anniversary in May, and we have a beautiful daughter.
All right.
Oh no. Charlie Kirk reproduced? My faith in humanity is just further declining every day.
Well, I think, you're being the only married person here.
Oh yeah. This is a 7-hour long video. 7 hours of Charlie Kirk.
I think that's perhaps a good jumping off point. I think
his poor wife, she's endured 5 years with him.
A lot of people, both men and women, they're kind of frustrated with the current dating landscape. Do you have any thoughts on this? What's your diagnosis and any solutions?
Diagnosis, wokeism.
And we'll open it up.
Sure. Yeah. I think people need to date with the intent to marry. Yeah, I'm a big critic of hookup culture in its current form. I believe should be sacred and is sacred, and it's really thrown away way too generously in this society and culture.
So there's not hookup culture versus getting married. These are not mutually exclusive things, and these are not really the two options at all. These are actually two extreme options. No, you don't need to necessarily date with the intention of getting married. I would say, however, that yes, of course, hookup culture specifically is generally, it's not very safe, it's not very healthy, it overall seems to be a detriment for your own well-being. It's not something that should be encouraged or recommended, really. However, the antithesis to that is not get married necessarily. Well, maybe it's the antithesis with the most extreme side of things, but the nuanced solution here, at least what Kirk is saying, should be date with the intention of getting into some kind of a relationship. Like, make sure you're actually pursuing people who you think you would be interested in for more than just like one night really quick, like a one-night stand kind of thing. Date with the intention of maybe getting in a committed and serious relationship even. You could probably make that argument because then you'll be more selective and picky about who you decide to sleep with and whatnot. But this whole, like, get married is just ridiculous.
And I can tell you I'm super blessed. I have the best wife in the world. We have an amazing life. Building a family is the coolest thing ever. And my prayer for all of you is that you one day can do that. That's so cute. It's honestly the most joyful thing. And I've had some pretty amazing experiences. I've been very, very blessed. Very lucky, you could say, but very blessed is the word I would use. And the greatest joy I've ever had is coming home to my little daughter running up to my leg. There's nothing that even comes close to it. Not flying on Air Force One, not meeting with presidents. That pales in comparison to your little girl coming up and squeezing your leg.
Okay, got it. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that with,
Yeah, so I just want...
All right, I just was curious about that. What is a woman? Charlie baffled by her definition.
No, I hear that. I do want to actually get back to even more of a fundamental question, and I'm sorry I didn't ask this.
Sure.
What is a woman?
Oh.
A woman is somebody who presents as our social conception of womanhood.
So
you acts in such a way.
So Pxie, just can you answer that question without using the word woman or womanhood?
It's because basically it would be a functional definition. So as a society, we have an understanding of what woman is.
What
It's
is
a
that?
man.
Yeah, that's basically.
I am a man.
Well then.
X,
Can you
Y,
elaborate?
XY chromosomes.
Okay, but the problem with that is that I didn't check your chromosomes before coming in here and calling you a man, and you didn't check my chromosomes before coming in here.
Or genitals.
Or genitals, calling me a woman.
So let me just
Already he's getting like just mocked. Like I like how everybody's just like chuckling like at how silly he's being. He's like, what's a woman? And Pxie was like, had such a solid definition ready to go. That was great.
play this out. So first of all, you can't give me a definition without using the word woman.
That's a functional definition. Yeah, sure. Do you know what functional definitions are?
I'm very well aware, and you should have
He
a
has no idea what a functional definition is. He's lying. So womanhood defines our concept of woman. It is circular in that way because that's how that definition operates, because it's socially constructed.
functional definition for the most important question in civilization,
No.
right?
Well, the
Don't
point
know.
of a
It's
functional definition.
What? Did he just say that was the most important question in civilization? I'm pretty sure I can think of a lot of other questions that are way more important than what is a woman.
Functional definitions are a definition that is by the function of something. So, like, for example,
No, there's an objective
1 equals
definition.
1.
Wait,
It's like
oh my god, did he
one-
just say there's an objective definition? Dude, first he lied about knowing what a functional definition is, because as soon as he like hand waved and he's like, I'm well aware what a functional definition is, he probably just thinks it means a definition that functions well when you use it or something. He probably doesn't even know what she's actually referring to. And then he just said, this definition is objective. Definitions are not objective. It is impossible for definitions to be objective because they define our subjective perception of things, essentially. Not to mention, definitions change, and they have changed.
1 is a function of 1. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I do. So
It's going right through Charlie Kirk. I can see the way he's like, yeah, He's like, just get back to the dialogue tree.
then can you give me an objective, a functional, utilitarian, any sort of biological definition of what a woman is? Because
The
how
problem
Even our categorization of biological traits are subjective.
can we debate feminism if we can't agree what a woman is?
I would
Well, if you're stupid, like, then maybe you can just sit out for this one, champ.
even like I feel like Pixie's definition absolutely satisfies the definition of what constitutes womanhood, but I would define it only slightly differently, which is that it's a person who performs a set of social roles that are typically associated with feminine characteristics, but not necessarily, because there are even cis women who fall outside of this, and we still consider them women nonetheless. Like butch lesbians, for example, are women that exhibit very masculine characteristics, but nonetheless society understands.
It's about the internal perception you have of yourself and the way that that internal perception corresponds with the external social construct of gender. So if we have a socially constructed gender spectrum, then that is influencing the way people are being raised. And as you're being raised, that is also forming an internal perception of yourself. If you are a man or if you're a boy, well, that means you pull from this external social construct of characteristics, traits, etc. So this is where I would distinguish this, and I think that my definition is better than the one that this girl with the glasses just gave, is it's an internal perception you have of yourself in relation to the external social construct. So it's more than just the behavior and the characteristics. It's ultimately that internal perception. So just like if someone hypothetically, if they are a woman, they would continue to be a woman, whether they're performing like sort of stereotypical behavior that we associate with womanhood, or if they aren't, because it's the internal perception that holds that weight.
Them to be women, so
I find cis to be a very offensive word, by the way. I don't know how you feel about the cis.
I don't
men, cis women.
think
I think
too
it's hate
deeply about
speech,
that.
to be honest.
I didn't mean to trigger you, Brian.
As-
I would have
as
given
a
you a trigger
s-
warning before if I
So
had known.
do you think anyone can become a woman?
Dude, what a f***ing bitch. This guy. I'm sorry, that's offensive. I'm really triggered. Ha ha ha. You're not funny, dude. You sound legitimately upset.
Yep, but not anyone will.
Okay, so then at what point do they become a woman?
It will depend on where they are in their gender transition for the
Does
most
it
part.
does it require drugs to become a woman?
No.
Personally, I think it's a mindset. It's a spiritual energy. It's the vibe that you give off.
you know, like
The vibe. Before we continue on, I want to just
So, Phoebe, no, you don't belong here. I'm sorry. I feel so sorry for that girl. She was just trying to like add a little bit of spark or whatever, and it was like everyone was just like, okay, that needs some canned laughter after that part, man.
it's a spiritual energy. It's the vibe that you give off, you know, like
the vibe. Before we continue on, I want to just give everyone an opportunity to answer Charlie. No, totally fine. To answer Charlie.
I'm sorry. It's just like the vibe you give off, man. Okay, well, what if other people don't pick up on that vibe? Does that mean then they can invalidate your gender identity? I didn't pick up on your vibe. I didn't really get that feminine energy vibe from you. Sorry. I guess I'm just not going to call you a woman now.
What is a woman? Starting with you, we'll go around the table. Go ahead.
Can you skip me?
We'll come back to her.
I'm a woman.
So come back to you? Or?
Yeah, come back to me. Come back to me. Let me
Sure,
brainstorm
okay,
on
go
that.
ahead.
Same. I'm a woman. I
what
don't
is
know.
a woman?
Like, I don't.
What about you? Can I have you tilt your mic down just
Yeah,
a
of
tad?
course.
Perfect. Go ahead.
Right there.
Yeah.
I'm a woman, but I also do think that a woman is someone who identifies as a woman, and that's that.
I mean, theoretically, it's someone who's born with a womb, but this generation obviously has proven that men can turn into women. So I'm not discluding that.
It's not, by the way, a woman is not defined as somebody who is born with a womb. There are actually women who are born without a uterus whatsoever. Are those people not women? That's what I would want to ask this person. Yeah, maybe it's kind of rare. Yeah, maybe it doesn't happen all the time, of course, but it happens enough so. I think it's like 1 in 5,000 women born without a uterus. That's decent enough that now your definition is excluding women. But all women who are women believe they are women. So they have an internal perception of themselves that is in line with or that at least is shaped by a social construct. It is not their adherence to that behavior, but rather the way that it shapes an internal sense of self.
I still think that they should be perceived as what they're portraying themselves as. But technically, I still think trans girls, they are a version of a man, but they can still be classed as a woman, which is a bit tricky, but yeah.
Molly?
I'll say the same answer. I think what constitutes as a woman is the energy that you give off and that you want to put out into the world.
So if being a woman or a female is a mindset, can your age also be a mindset? Can you choose to be, can you just say I feel 14, which is a classifiable.
So notice, by the way, that what Kirk did there is he chose the weakest response, which is definitely the mindset one, where you just make it sound, that's just the way that you think, haha. No, it's like, it's deeper than that. It's an internal sense of self. This is molded over time. This shapes how you view yourself. It's so much bigger than just like a mindset. Even more so, age is not something that is necessarily like shaped upon you in the same kind of way. Now, there are certain expectations associated with certain ages, perhaps we could argue, but age is a metric by which you measure time. Like, the way we measure time is, yes, still subjective, but just if it's subjective does not then mean that it is a social construct, or sorry, it's subjective and a social construct, but just if it is a social construct does not then mean that it can be an identity. There are many things that are socially constructed. I bring this up all the time. The fact that the value we place on money is socially constructed, because money by itself is actually just paper. There's nothing of value intrinsically on money. It is purely our social understanding that this thing has value. That doesn't mean that I can identify as $5. That's dumb. And everybody knows that. It's a bad faith question of his.
Mental condition, by the way, of in it.
So I will say, yes, I know people that act way younger than they actually are, and they love acting way younger than they actually are. And I know people that, like act way older than they are, and they, and they pride themselves in that. And I think.
Okay.
Yes, but that doesn't make them the thing. Nor does behaving like a woman make you a woman. It's the internal sense of self. when it comes to gender. But age is not an internal or a socially constructed form of identity. So even if there is a sense of self that is also shaped around how old you are and your age and whatnot, maybe, but a lot of that is socially constructed, at least once you get older. Of course, there are certain things, kids cannot do, of course. But just if it's, again, subjective and socially constructed, doesn't mean that it can all just be identified with and identified as.
Fair enough. So if a 35-year-old man claims he's 14, should we have any problem if he wants to have sex with another 14-year-old?
No. I'm not saying
No,
that you should.
Probably should have a problem, I think.
No. I'm not
Well,
saying that
good
they
idea to have
should
a
be
problem.
able to have. But
But
they
who's
can
to say he's
state,
not
I
14?
feel 14.
Yeah, okay, this girl's backtracking hardcore now. They can say it. They're allowed to say it. No one's arguing whether or not you're allowed to say it. With gender, because it is a socially constructed form of identity, that means that if you have that internal sense of self and you identify that way, that you are that thing. Just like being a Christian, my favorite example of them all. Being a Christian. What does it mean to be a Christian? Some people say you need to be baptized. Other people say you just need to believe in Jesus Christ. What is it? Well, it's kind of subjective. But you know what? That is going to shape a sense of a Christian, at least, a sense of themselves and the way that they view themselves within Christianity. Many denominations preach that it's just the belief in Jesus Christ that is going to ultimately save you. So that's actually a mindset. So all it takes is a mindset, even for a Christian, to just be a Christian. And Kirk would accept that. If someone said, well, I believe it, I believe in Jesus Christ, and I believe that I'm a sinner, and now I believe that God saved me. These are all things you believe about yourself. And Charlie Kirk would 110% respect that. How is that not a form of identity just the same? When it comes to age, saying I identify as 35 doesn't make you 35. Saying I identify as 14 does not make you 14, the way as I identify this way, because it is a socially constructed form of identity, does. The way that this mindset, I believe this thing about myself, makes me a Christian, can make you a Christian. Just believing you're 14 doesn't actually mean you're 14, because that is based on our classification of time.
But if your identity is an energy or a feeling that can change, why would it be wrong for a 35-year-old to say he's 14? Therefore,
because he's not.
People's identities change all the time. They grow, they change, they morph. Like, you weren't a dad, now you have a child, now you are a dad. Your identity just changed.
But then how is someone who has male parts a woman if he's not a woman?
That's two different
It's
things.
Why is it?
Because you're comparing biology to a socially constructed form of gender, to our understanding of gender, and to a collection of behaviors, traits, etc. That's why. Because you don't determine who is and is not a woman based on their biology, Kirk. You don't. I mean, maybe you do because you're creepy, but generally you're not supposed to.
Because you
It's
can't
a
go
mindset,
back
isn't
in
it?
time.
Your age isn't a mindset.
Yeah.
I mean,
but then why is your sex or your
He's actually like they're almost wrecking him without even meaning to. Where they're like, your age isn't a mindset. Like, it's what? Like, there's difference here. One thing is an identity and one is not. That's what they're trying to say, and they're just kind of failing to articulate it.
like,
but then why is your sex or your gender a mindset and your
Because-
age isn't?
I don't know which one is which. One of you could probably
Well,
say, but
sex-
sex and
Do you
gender
agree?
is
At
different.
least acknowledge that sex and gender are two separate
That-
things.
That's what I was gonna
There are
say.
0 genders, 2 sexes, and infinite personalities.
That's a cute little quote there, Kirk. He's so annoying. I actually really hate Kirk because he has this smug, dumb face, and then he just says stuff that's so stupid.
Gender doesn't exist.
What do you mean?
Okay.
Sex does. So the parts you're born with is who you are.
How does
Okay, so when people, when you start to, when you're dealing with people this, you need to learn how to navigate this. You suddenly have to navigate this entirely differently. Okay, no longer are you like having a conversation with a fellow peer. You are now the teacher, and your student is like a 2-year-old in the special ed class. Okay, like that's how bad this has just gotten. Now you need to walk them through it, literally like a toddler needs you to hold their hand when they're scared, or need you to walk them through something super basic to understand it. So, okay, Charlie, listen, please. Here's my question for you, okay? People have biological parts. sexual characteristics. Now, do you think there are a certain collection of traits and expectations that you would expect certain people who might have this biology to adhere to? He would have to say, yes. That's called gender, buddy, because we have decided that that collection of behavior and traits that we think the people with that biology should adhere to, we have decided what that collection of traits is. And then we have decided that we're going to raise people with this biology specifically to believe that this is where they should try to, or this is what they should try to adhere to.
Does gender not exist?
It's a 1960s clinical term, largely made out of the Academy of John
Clinical?
Money and Alfred Kinsey and many postmodern child psychiatrists, many of whom, by the way, were not really great people, but we don't have to go into that. But gender is a new term of the last 50 or 60 years.
So the word is new. So what is the concept of gender, Charlie? What is the actual concept of gender refer to? This is how you know this guy's acting in so bad faith. So you think gender didn't exist before 1965? Really? Back then, people with penises had no idea what it meant to act like a man. They didn't, people with penises, they were like, should I be wearing this beautiful pink frilly dress with a thong? Or should I be picking this manly suit that smells like soot and the blood of my enemies? I don't know what to do. There were expectations. There was a collection of expectations people had to adhere to. This is how you know Charlie Kirk is acting in bad faith. And I'm actually getting annoyed and like mad watching this now because he is so. And when I have my chance to go on here and talk to him, because I will really love to look him in his beady little eyes, his small little face, and say, Charlie, you should identify as a.
Yeah, but it still exists.
But personalities exist. We can agree with that. Proclivities or interests or likes exist.
So, wow, Charlie. So you're telling me that people born with penises are all just naturally having a personality interest in suppressing their emotions? So let me ask you this, Charlie. Baby boys, when they're first born, they are more emotional than baby girls. They exhibit more emotions, they have a wider emotional range, and they are, on average, more emotional. But then as they get older, they stop being as emotional. We've also seen studies that show that when it's around the age of 3, if you have a little boy who's crying, he's oftentimes dismissed, while if you have a little girl that's crying, she's comforted. Boys are taught early on to ignore their emotions or to suppress them, or that that's womanly and therefore a bad thing. That is a socially constructed thing. That is not a personality interest that just happens to fall on a huge majority of people with penises? Really, Charlie? You realize that is so much harder to believe than just believing that a concept such as gender exists?
So by that definition, then if you're a woman or a man, is your energy. It is your personality.
Well, yeah, the goal, or what used to be the case, is the vast majority, 99.9% of all people, their biology and their reality, or how they viewed their reality, I should say, were in alignment. And now that's not so much the case. So people are, first of all, there's many elements to this. People are told that they can become something they can't. So they go on a very, very damaging, self-destructive pattern of medical interventions that even if you're pro-trans, you have to acknowledge that, you know, a hysterectomy at age 17 is not exactly an easy surgery.
I don't think anyone at 17 should be altering their body. But
no, I agree.
Yeah.
It's happening right now at thousands of young kids across the.
So do you think that sometimes it's like really bad, Charlie, that people would be put on antidepressants maybe before they've really been evaluated? Because, you know, there are real issues that it's fair to talk about. You don't have to be conspiratorial to acknowledge that there are certainly sometimes issues with doctors that overprescribe certain medications. So let's say that's the case for antidepressants, Charlie. Do you think that means depression is fake? Does that mean that everybody who claims to be depressed is actually lying? There's no such thing as depression. It's just your personality. Your personality type is just really liking jumping off of high buildings.
What is called gender affirming care, but it's irreversible
Care or
damage.
surgeries?
Both. So puberty blockers and hormone
There's
blockers.
thousands of kids that are getting hysterectomies across the United States.
No, thousands of kids are getting puberty blockers or hormone blockers or
Oh, so thousands of kids are getting the treatment they desperately needed? That's great, man. Oh, and what if it's the wrong treatment? Well, I mean, they can always just stop the puberty blockers and their puberty will resume as normal. So thankfully, it's actually not really a very big deal at all. I'm not sure why are you freaking out there, Karen?
puberty blockers,
Yeah,
probably
but
even more, tens of thousands.
You could stop using
And
those, though.
as far as breast reduction surgery or hysterectomies, we don't know the number, but I'll even say it's probably only a couple dozen. It's probably, you're right, it's probably not thousands.
Right.
But we don't know the exact numbers, but an estimate is anywhere between 10 to 15,000 minors, and it's growing, are currently receiving monthly doses of hormone replacement theory, estrogenic
First, it was critical race theory. Now they're literally injecting the kids with hormonal theory.
estrogenic therapy.
Yeah, but you can stop those and be like.
Well, that's the question, right? There's a lot of detransitioners that are speaking out that are not able to puberty is not an assembly line that you could.
Okay, tell you what, Charlie, I'll make you a deal. Every story you show me of a detransitioner, I will then find 2 stories of trans people talking about how they desperately need this treatment and they've been waiting forever and they can't access it. There you go. If you want to go based on anecdotes, I promise you there are more anecdotes from the other perspective. But again, he's bad faith, so he ignores it entirely, but he's willing to look at this little minority for this one little thing to then try to bolster his argument overall. Now, don't get me wrong. Detransitioners, that happens. There is such a thing as medical malpractice. There is such a thing as medical institutions moving too quickly and failing to adhere to the proper standards and actual guidelines and being way too quick to give people treatment before they have been really fully evaluated and given some time to think about the weight of this decision necessary, depending on what that decision, how far the surgery may be or the treatment may be. But to act as though it's the detransitioners are somehow this huge thing, this massive talking point for you, that's where you look disingenuous because you're not acknowledging how minuscule this issue is. I've said it before and I'll say it again, but yes, the regret rate for transgender surgery is lower than the regret rate for knee surgery.
Puberty is not an assembly line that you could just push a button and restart. That is a increasingly disproven scientific theory right now. Chloe Cole is one of the most famous detransitioners who, she's in her 20s and she was sold a bill of goods, and when she was 16 she said, I think I'm a man, and she went on a very, very aggressive regimen of hormone blockers and puberty blockers, and she has huge regret, and hopefully one day she'll be able to have children.
Okay, but that's just like one person. What about all the other people that were helped?
So I'm just making a point, though, that these ideas have consequences. It's more than just a silly question. Oh, what is a woman? That if you can't answer it, or at the very least say that you should allow minors to become adults before they make these decisions, then, and this is not a small thing, the quote-unquote gender-affirming care, we know that in California you have to be 18 years old to get a tattoo, and yet 14-year-olds can go to what we call a doctor and get a highly aggressive hormone replacement therapy.
It's because one is a medical treatment for a real condition that, according to the standards, you need to be exhibiting symptoms of for at least 6 months. That's because one is a treatment and the other is a random cosmetic thing. It's never a necessity. If someone is struggling with severe debilitating gender dysphoria and it's causing them significant depression and distress, and this is the best method for them, a safe and reversible thing. Literally, I like how his solution's like, have you considered suffering?
Treatment, sometimes without even notifying their parent. And all of these are ramifications of the inability to answer very simple biological questions.
I would be interested in...
It's funny, Kirk, because I would just love to see how him and his little biological answers and everything would actually solve these issues. Do you think that your biological thing would stop gender dysphoria? There's literal documentation of people in ancient times who had gender dysphoria. There was literally a documentation of someone in Rome that literally walked around and sought Like, I think it was like a man's genitals, like to literally remove them. I know that's kind of graphic, but it's true. This shit has been, like, this gender dysphoria, the discomfort thing, that has happened and been a thing forever.
Seeing your exact like study or citation for when it comes to like puberty blockers, because I know a lot of people, or not a lot of people, there's a lot of people who end up on puberty blockers not because they're necessarily trans, but because they're going through puberty too early, and there are clear like negative side effects and consequences of, let's say, like a 10-year-old girl getting her period.
That's a separate. You're right.
Yeah, but it's used on cis children. I think like what you're talking about is precocious puberty.
But it's not used on perfectly healthy, physically able-bodied children, right? So there's a great book that I guess we have to do this. I'll reference one book, and she's a non-political doctor. Her name is Dr. Miriam Grossman. It's a book called Lost in Transnation. She has treated.
She's not a political person or anything, you know? She's an anti-transgender activist. I was contacted by lawyers in Salt Lake City about a 13-year-old boy whose divorced parents were in litigation over his social transition. Zach had recently declared himself a girl. Okay, so herself a girl. Mother was on board. Father wasn't going along with it. I reviewed Zach's recent psychiatric hospitalization. Staff listed gender dysphoria as one of his diagnoses and consistently used girl names or girl's name, female pronouns, but the reasoning for those clinical decisions was absent. The hospital records indicated Zach heard voices and saw ghosts. I searched for more information about the voices and the ghosts, but found none. What? They're just bringing up stories of people that were like, thought they might, that they might just be like, have other neurological conditions besides gender dysphoria. At least one of those consultants, my role was to provide my professional opinion, but that wasn't the case with David, a patient in Colorado with whom I worked directly. One day, David told his parents that he's transgender and has to be called Zoe, she and her. She wanted blockers because the hair sprouting over the corners of her lips and her cracking voice reminded him of her of a boy. If only she could take estrogen, she told me, having breasts and wider hips would make me feel confident and secure. Okay. DSM-5, state of Colorado say the only permissible response is to act as if she were a girl. No, but I mean, if this person's having severe distress because of this, and they prefer to be acknowledged or treated as a girl, why wouldn't you? What? Oh, wait, look, that's all of it. That's all it is. It's just her own experience with some people where they had gender dysphoria listed. This one girl thought she might be trans, but she was in foster care and abused by her mom. Maybe she was trans and also abused. You know that LGBT kids, trans kids, if you're insecure about your gender, you're more likely to be isolated and on your own, thus putting you at a greater risk of being abused. So that's the non-political writer who we should really be checking out, guys. Totally non-political, non-biased or anything.
Has treated, not just theorized. She's a clinician and a physician, not just someone who writes abstract medical journals. And she is one of the most outspoken people against what is called gender-affirming care, and she's treating hundreds of kids that are now damaged by this.
Detransitioners exist, but what do you say to the thousands of trans people that actually report happiness and being healthy after they receive gender-affirming care?
Don't doubt that in the short term, testosterone therapy from someone who has a fair amount of testosterone, it can make you feel confident. It can make you feel better in your skin. That is not a lasting effect, though.
But it is for some.
How is it not a lasting effect?
The self-harm rate after 8 to 10 years actually goes up. It nearly doubles. And we're still studying it.
So he's actually referring to that Swedish cohort, which did not actually find that it went up. The study itself actually found the gender dysphoria treatment, gender-affirming care, was actually effective. It just wasn't enough to fully alleviate some of the symptoms, largely because there are also social issues and whatnot. The infamous Swedish study. I have a whole part in my document about this. A Swedish cohort of trans people from 1973 to 2003 found that suicidality remained high among trans people, even after treatment. What conservatives don't mention is that trans suicide was still higher compared to the general population. We already know trans people have a higher suicide rate. What matters is comparing trans people who wanted treatment to trans people who wanted treatment but did not receive it. When comparing the two groups, the trans people who received the treatment had decreases in depression compared to trans people who did not receive the desired treatment. Study conclusion: persons with transsexualism after sex reassignment have considerably higher risks for mortality, suicidal behavior, and psychiatric morbidity than the general population. Our findings suggest that sex reassignment, although alleviating gender dysphoria, may not suffice as treatment entirely and should inspire improved psychiatric care after treatment. And then even the author of this study herself did an interview, a direct quote. The aim of trans medical interventions is to bring a trans person's body more in line with their gender identity, resulting in the measurable diminishment of their gender dysphoria. However, trans people as a group also experience significant social oppression in the form of bullying, abuse, and hate crimes. Medical transition alone won't resolve the effects of crushing social oppression, social anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress. What we found is that treatment models which ignore the effect of cultural oppression and outright hate aren't enough. We need to understand that our treatment models must be responsive to not only gender dysphoria, but the effects of anti-trans hate as well. People who misuse the study always omit the fact that the study clearly states that this is not an evaluation of gender dysphoria treatment. If we look at the literature, we can find that several recent studies conclude that WPATH standards of care, compliant treatment decreases gender dysphoria and improves mental health. The author of the study, that conservative site that Charlie Kirk just cited to say that it's actually higher after treatment. No. It was not that it actually was higher. It was not trans people where someone's depressed, someone has gender dysphoria, they're depressed, then they get treatment, then their depression gets even worse. No, actually, it's that their depression gets better. However, it's still higher compared to the general population. It's really not that complicated.
That's the other point, is that I'm not going to throw around a lot of studies here, and they very well might.
That's your first mistake there, Charlie. I'm not going to throw a lot of studies around or anything. Facts, research, data collection. What are you, little bitch?
And they very well might be right. It might have helped them individually, but let me give you an example. If a medication is on the market and it harms 1 in 250,000 people, for example, Robitussin. You guys ever take Robitussin?
No.
No, it's a cough thing. It's, they found that.
Yo, I love that Robitussin, that Robitussie. Yeah.
One of their lots of Robitussin last week might have been contaminated, and they did a massive recall, right? And it was
so a contamination means that if it's contaminated and you take it, that is a certain issue that arises, potential death, fatality, who knows, you get sick. Only bad comes from this. With the gender dysphoria treatment, there's actually an overwhelming slew of research, okay, that heavily suggests that it's very beneficial.
Just a whisper of it, okay? The point that is in medicine, the first rule used to be first do no harm. And the fact
deliberately, but then by your logic, if that's true, then it would be doing harm to deprive people of the treatment that all the data literally says is effective. You f***ing ape.
That's right.
No, they've changed
The
it.
Hippocratic Oath?
They've changed it, yeah. They have.
Who's they?
The American Medical Association and a lot of the medical institutions. It's
They've
similar,
been
but it's
changed
not
by
the same.
like woke ideology.
Well, you'd be surprised, actually. The medical industry's been taken over by a lot of radical
All
forces.
doctors are woke now.
This feminist is actually trolling the shit out of Charlie Kirk is getting trolled right now, dude.
Well, for example, I mean, when they were giving monoclonal antibodies in the city of New York, they were prioritizing people based on the color of their skin. Black individuals in New York got monoclonal antibodies above their white counterparts.
Was it based on the color?
I'm pretty sure that was based far more on income than anything else. I'm pretty sure it was that lower income areas are going to be receiving this stuff first because they didn't already have access to it to begin with.
Or like maybe their background related to like their socioeconomic status.
It was racial, but I don't want to get too deep into that.
What was it? Okay. In stark contrast to recent false claims that white patients are being denied access to monoclonal antibodies based on their race, new national data from the Centers for Disease Control have revealed wide disparities in the use of outpatient monoclonal antibody treatment among patients with Hispanic ethnicity and Asian, Black, and other race. Unequal access to novel treatments is certainly not unique to COVID-19, with access to barriers extending from clinical trials to biases in clinical decision-making. Okay, hold on. disparities in the use. So white people are actually using and taking advantage of the access to those resources at higher rates. So they're saying if you want more people to be taking this therapy, you should also be targeting people that are in this certain demographic or might be of this background, because there is a disparity there when it comes to people of color compared to white people. This is okay. This makes a lot more sense now. This is not like about denying white people and just giving it to one group. It's about specifically targeting areas where there are disproportionate rates of people who have not been accessing this. As such, racial equity considerations within resource allocation frameworks are not just the right thing to do to redress injustice, they will also help reduce the spread and severity of COVID-19 across our country. So when you have a large group of people, even if it is, in this case, it's a racial demographic of people disproportionately not taking this treatment, by making sure they do get that treatment, it makes it safer for everyone around.
In medicine in particular, you must have a cautious approach, even if there were pluses and positives, which might very well be true. If there's even a 1%, a 2% adverse event, you pull the drug immediately. Because
I think this should go for everything. Like if there's even a 1-2% chance your child is going to turn out like Charlie Kirk, you get that abortion immediately.
you first do no harm. If there's something that is actively damaging a society, and it's now a certifiable fact that we see thousands of young kids are being told that they can transition, when in reality they have other underlying issues that we should address. Depression, trauma, anxiety, or they're on the autism spectrum.
And what if they have these conditions, not autism, but what if they have some of these conditions because of the gender dysphoria? I'm pretty sure there's a high rate of comorbidities. We only went through a tiny bit of this, but I just can't get through any more right now. What's going to happen is I'll probably review another bit of this at another time when I stream again. But there you go, Charlie Kirk. It hurts.